2026 Early Connections Conference, Action, presented by the Van Slaan Foundation. The title of this presentation is Accessing Community Sports and Recreation Opportunities, the Why and the How.
Thank you for joining me at my presentation titled Accessing Community Sports and Recreation Opportunities, the Why and the How. Next slide, please. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Lauren Kling. On the right side of the slide, or left side of the slide, is my headshot. For my personal description, I am a brown-haired white woman. I'm wearing blue glasses, a green dress with white polka dots on it. I'm a physical therapist here in the Deafblind School at Perkins School for the Blind, and I work with deafblind children ages 3 to 22 who have moderate to high support needs. In my free time, I love to help the disability community access the outdoors and engage with youth in sports. I identify as a member of the neurodiversity community, and I created this presentation as a person without a physical disability. As an able-bodied person, I acknowledge that I can't represent the lived experiences of people with physical disabilities. Next slide. The choice of what language we use can be very impactful and can certainly lead to strong emotions for people. The language used by a person to identify themselves is their personal choice that should be respected by others. I affirm the right of individuals to choose and use the language that they prefer and denounce the use of derogatory or discriminatory language. Both disability first and person first language are used in my presentation. Okay. So, next slide. What are we talking about today? I want to establish the benefit of participation in sports for all athletes, regardless of ability, and then additionally appreciate the benefits for adaptive athletes. I want us all to understand how participation benefits extend to the family, the caregivers, and the community of adaptive athletes, review considerations and barriers for participation, and provide resources for programming, equipment rentals, and funding. Next slide. So first, we're going to talk about why should we get involved, the benefits to the participant, the family, and the community. And on the left side of the slide is an image of a young brown-haired girl with sunglasses sitting crisscross on a surfboard. A volunteer sits behind her and supports her on the surfboard, and they're both smiling because surfing is very fun. Next slide. So in general, the benefits of participation in sports that we're all pretty familiar with probably are that sports promote physical health, so you can improve your cardiorespiratory and cardiovascular function. It can promote mental health, so you have fewer depressive symptoms typically when you're participating in sports. Social health, it improves your self-esteem and opportunities for social interaction, as well as your well-being. So people who participate in sports often report a positive perception of their own health. On the right side of this, left side of the slide, there's an image of a young boy in winter gear and cross-country skis. He's smiling. Next slide. So other benefits of participation in sports that everyone experiences are that sports teach important skills like responsibility, commitment, learning the ability to accept feedback on performance. It helps with anticipatory problem solving, time management, communication skills, and goal identification. And it's important for us all to have access to these opportunities because often the kids that are exposed to sports end up having leadership positions in the future. On this slide, there's an image of a girl in a hiking wheelchair in the woods. There's 2 volunteers, each holding handles at the front and the back of the hiking chair. And she's bundled up in a sleeping bag and looking pretty happy with a big smile. Next slide. So additional benefits for adaptive athletes are that it creates a meaningful occupation for kids. You have peer support from people in similar experiences, and disability community is very important. It can lead to improved sensory and emotional regulation. It can help to build confidence and independence. So you're in these novel experiences. They're designed for your success, and it's a way to support risk-taking. It can contribute to a sense of identity. Identity carries throughout your life, and people who participated early in adaptive sports often continue to identify as an athlete even after maybe they've stopped doing a particular sport. And it can encourage long-term engagement in physical activity, leading to a healthy lifestyle. as well as fostering social participation and a sense of belonging. So again, those positive emotions, relationship building, you get a sense of achievement, and for lack of a better phrase, it's a bit of a normalizing experience for someone who otherwise might be going to a lot of medical appointments and not have the same experiences that their peers are going through. Next slide. So on this slide, there's an image of a white woman with light hair and a ponytail. She's wearing a Team USA rugby jersey, and she's pushing herself down the court in her sports wheelchair, carrying the rugby ball in her lap. On this slide is a quote from her. Her name is Sarah Adam. She's an occupational therapist and the first ever woman to win gold medal in the U.S. wheelchair rugby, and that was in 2023 at the Pan American Games in Santiago. And her quote says, "When people have access to adaptive sports and can be part of a team, that improves their self-confidence, their self-esteem, they're trying new things, they're okay with learning through failure, and that's important." On the next slide is a timeline. It's an anecdotal story about one of Sarah's teammates about the importance of early access to sport. So her teammate acquired a spinal cord injury at the age of 13. And during rugby, she saw someone watching a video of, or during her rehab, she saw someone watching a video of wheelchair rugby. She was interested and she was told, no, that's not for you. So initially, she had no exposure to adaptive sports for 10 years after her injury. After that, she was using a power chair and she required assistance for all of her self-care activities. Then in the next box, she attended a wheelchair rugby development camp at the age of 23. In the next box, 1 month after that, she was able to transition from a power wheelchair to a manual wheelchair, which has just really good outcomes, and we call them like prognostic indicators for a person's health and well-being if it's something that they're physically able to do. A year later from that, she was living and traveling independently, and now she's a member of the Team USA wheelchair rugby team. So I think that's a really great story to highlight what early access does and how someone's life can be radically changed by being involved in sport. She was living more independently, not just because she got stronger from sport, but because she had changes in mindset in addition to her physical skills, and she was now supported by the disabled athlete community. She was able to improve her health, gain confidence, and connect with her identity as an athlete. Next slide. So there are a lot of benefits for families as well with becoming involved in adaptive sports. As I said before, there's kind of that normalizing experience where it's just like it's a typical thing to go with your kid and go to their sports activities. So that helps kids and families have that like sense of doing like a typical experience. You have the opportunity to share resources and build community with other families where the kids have disabilities. Parents can feel a sense of social support by connecting with other parents. You can have opportunities for family bonding. So families of children with disabilities who participate in recreational activities together had better coping strategies for stress and also reported more positive self-perceptions about their family and their experiences. It can also improve equity with siblings within a family dynamic. It can be typical for kids to go and sit on the sidelines while their sibling plays sports. And now this time it might be their sibling who's coming and sitting on the sidelines to watch them. And also there are many programs that are inclusive where all the siblings can play the sports or participate in the activity together. Next slide. So on this slide, I want to read you a parent testimonial from the AmpSurf website. It's an adaptive surf organization for kids and adults with any kind of disability. And the quote from the family says, "AmpSurf makes getting our disabled daughter up on a surfboard an easier experience than taking her to the grocery store. Every volunteer we met with was incredibly helpful and eager to help our 6-year-old with cerebral palsy, non-speaking, and non-ambulatory, and her sisters have a successful experience. They fitted the girls with wetsuits and encouraged and supported them every step of the way." It continues on the next slide to say, "The entire vibe was one of care and respect, which made handing over our most vulnerable child to brave the ocean with people we just met feel easy. As a parent, these types of experiences are few and far between. We enjoyed AmpSurf last year so much we brought along another family. Their complex kiddo and siblings also had a blast. Parents stood on the shore, just hung out and watched. An excellent day was had by all. So this really just highlights the ease and inclusion that families can experience when they participate in activities that are actually designed for people with disabilities. Next slide. So in terms of the greater benefits for the community, you're creating this inclusive community both for kids and families. It can help non-disabled people who are part of that community to have a better appreciation and understanding of the disability experience, the kind of preparation that goes involved to it, the effort, the time, and the cost for someone with a disability to be able to access the community, which I think is a really great perspective to gain. Integrated sports activities are also shown to have positive impacts on the social and personal development for both the disabled children and the non-disabled children. Next slide. So next we're going to be talking about considerations for participation, access, and finding the program that's the right fit. And on this slide, there's an image of an older gentleman who's leaning forward towards a young girl. She's wearing a climbing support harness both at her legs and her chest. He's helping her to connect her, and she's using much wider climbing bars instead of typical climbing holds. Next slide. Okay. So on this slide, there is New Zealand Paralympic boccia champion Greg Jackson. He's seated in his wheelchair and he's pushing a small leather ball down a ramp with a head-mounted device. So sports are necessary and valuable occupations for all kids, but there's a big discrepancy between access for disabled versus non-disabled kids. Nationwide, 25.6% of persons with a disability reports being physically inactive, while that's only 12.8% of those without a disability. So when you're not being physically active in whatever that means for your body, the risk for secondary health problems later in life is much higher. So kids who have complex disabilities really do benefit from rough play like their same-aged peers. It builds emotional intelligence, it helps with physical coordination and connection, and you just have to make sure that you're adapting it for the safety needs and the sensory needs of the child. You need to find the sport that fits the child, so you have to make sure it's medically appropriate. That often means working with your medical team, but be aware that you might have to educate the medical team about what's involved in that sport and how it can be adapted for your child, because unfortunately, medical providers are not exempt from ableism. And then there are sports for just about every condition and physical skill. So that's why I wanted to highlight this picture where somebody is playing a sport on an international level with just using a small amount of head motion and is very successful at it. Long-term engagement for everyone in sports happens when you're matching their physical abilities, their personal interests, their support needs, and that it fits within the family support system. So when we highlight someone's functional abilities instead of deficit, we can find ways that they're able to participate. For example, Greg Jackson. Next slide. Okay. So while we're talking about adaptive sports activities, I do want to highlight the concept of dignity of risk if it's not something you've heard of before. I think in general, it can sound kind of intimidating to have someone, especially with higher support need disabilities, to involve them in sport and have that think, like, what does that look like? Will my child be safe? This concept was created in 1972 by Robert Persk, and the dignity of risk says that we should allow people to make their own decisions and to try new things, even if there's risk involved. When we try to remove every risk, we also remove opportunities for learning, building confidence, and self-determination. So people with disabilities, just like everyone else, have the right to make mistakes, to learn from experience, and to grow more independent. When you're considering the dignity of risk, it's all about balance. You want to provide support, safety, and guidance without taking away someone's access to experience and right to live their own life, because true inclusion means choice. Next slide. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. So access and barriers. So it sounds great to say that everybody should do this, but that's not to say that it's not difficult to get our kids involved in this. So in this slide, there's an image of a young girl wearing a winter hat and helmet. She's all bundled up and she's being strapped into a skating sled. So some of the barriers that we face with involving our clients and our children in these activities is just a general lack of awareness about what exists and what your options are. The biggest barrier is geography. Knowing what's in your area and also just being in a more secluded area, a more rural area, can limit your sport options. It limits the amount of equipment that's available to trial, and it leads to having a smaller disability community. So in general, you're increasing the distances to play or compete. You're increasing the time spent managing the challenges of traveling when you have a physical disability. And it's expensive. And there are a lot of other costs that people are facing. There's a disability tax, like everything just costs more when you're trying to manage disability. So the cost of participation in programs, the fact that it requires this very expensive specialized equipment, that it often requires travel either to compete or even just to get to the opportunity in the first place is a big barrier. And it also requires parent or caregiver participation. Managing a disability is very time consuming, and time is definitely a limited resource. So while parents of disabilities have reported feeling isolated, stressed, and frustrating when seeking services for their children, they also often have positive experiences, like was highlighted in the quote earlier, bringing their child to an environment that's been designed for them. Next slide. Okay, so while we're talking about this, I'd like to take a moment to review what the social model of disability is, if you haven't heard it. If you're not familiar with the terms that are part of that, so there's the medical model of disability. That tends to be what Western culture at this point is still pretty focused on. And in that model, disability is a consequence of a health condition, a disease, or an injury. It conceptualizes disability as a condition that a person has. So it's just very focused on the individual and is really focused on prevention, treatment, or curing of the disabling condition, which can be problematic because there's not always a cure. And also there's a lot more factors contributing to disability than just the individual's health condition. So the social model of disability, which is gaining traction, and I hope it continues to, focuses on the barriers that face people with disabilities instead of concentrating on the impairments and deficits of the person with the disability. So in this model, a person's activities are limited not by the impairment or the condition, but by an environment and barriers that are a consequence of a lack of social organization. So an example of this would be a person who uses a wheelchair trying to get into a building that has steps. What the disabling condition isn't the person in the wheelchair, it's that the environment isn't built to accommodate for people using wheelchairs. And when we build for people with wheelchairs, then people who use strollers, people who use walkers, people who are trying to get a suitcase out of their building all have a better time. So just a description of the image on the slide. The title of the image is "What are the barriers?" In the center is a picture of the globe that says "Disabling World," and arrows are pointing away that say environmental barriers, organizational barriers, attitudinal barriers, and communication barriers. So just want to highlight that when you go into an environment that's designed for a person with physical, with cognitive, with sensory disabilities, it lowers their barriers to participation and it increases access for everyone. So next slide. So I know some of the people here are providers, and I think we owe it to our clients and families that we work with to understand what our responsibilities are in helping to facilitate their entry into adaptive sports. So OTs, PTs, rec therapists, recreational therapists, adapted physical education teachers, social workers, etc. We really should know about the fact that adaptive sports exist and what the options are in our community. When possible, we want to be knowledgeable about what kind of health and medical considerations there are within the sport for an adaptive athlete. Not everybody's cut out for wheelchair rugby. Its nickname is murder ball, but Volt hockey is a very low contact power device sport that a much larger range of people are able to participate in. Something we should do, our families, our clients, they're busy, they've got a lot going on, they're stressed out. We just want to respectfully keep offering the options out there, make it available, let them know that it's there and that the community is ready to welcome them when they feel ready to join. That can include maintaining a resource list for easy referrals, which I have worked on and we'll get to later. Continue to create opportunities for exposure if possible. Try to streamline the process for families by providing clear next steps, trial options for different sports, things like that. For example, when I do a 3-year evaluation, I highlight resources as part of my recommendations. I reach out to families when I see that adaptive surfing opportunities have posted their clinics for this season, things like that. Just continuing to let them know what's out there and what their options are. You can help to educate them on transportation and funding opportunities. You can help address concerns and misconceptions about safety. That's a big one. The cost, the logistics, by letting them know what the evidence says and also sharing success stories. I just want you all to know that organizations want you to reach out to them. They're doing what they do because they want your child, your client to participate. And so if we can just connect them, then we can really get them set up and get them going. Next slide. Okay, so next we're going to talk about how actually to get involved, what types of programs are out there, what types of equipment is out there, and what funding opportunities are. So in this image on the slide, there's a Boston Ballet adaptive dance instructor, and they are high-fiving a smiling participant, and they're both wearing purple shirts that say "Dance is for Everyone." And I think I might have seen one of those shirts outside as well. We've got someone relaxing outside with one of the Boston Ballet shirts, so I was excited to see that. Next slide. Okay, I am not going to read out this massive list. The point of the massive list is just to highlight how many options there are that exist. This is all that I could find within 2 hours of Boston. I will say we do have a privilege being in an urban area in the Northeast that does lead to more options, but I just want people to know that these can exist so that if you're not from this area, you can try to find something that does exist in your area and is a good fit for you and your family. This list goes from backpacking to windsurfing. There are summer sports, winter sports, water sports, and indoor sports on the list. I do have, I'm going to get to a QR code with a link. We put the resource list that I created on a web page on Perkins that also has a downloadable Microsoft Word file. It was 28 pages, so they couldn't put all of that onto the web page with all the extra program description stuff, but it is alphabetized and it's available, and we'll get to the QR code soon. On the next slide, all of these organizations are listed on that handout and advertise that they provide rental equipment for use on your own. These I can read, it's a smaller list. All Out Adventures in Western Mass, Massachusetts DCR UIP, the Universal Access Program, all throughout Massachusetts. Northeast Passage is in Durham, New Hampshire. Smile, Massachusetts, Smile Mass has equipment available at various locations in New England. And Waypoint Adventure, they have a Lexington, Massachusetts office and also an office in Black Mountain, North Carolina. Also something to note is that many of the programs that do programming also provide equipment for use during the program. So even if they don't rent it, it might be available for the activity. Don't feel like you have to spend, $10,000 on a fully tricked out kayak in order to get out on the water. The programs can usually fully support those needs. So you can always reach out to them ahead of time to discuss the individual support needs of yourself or your client. On the next slide, I have, again, a longer list of some funding resources. Funding is absolutely a significant barrier to participation in adaptive sports, especially not just the cost of participating, but also the specialized equipment and travel time. There are some, but not a lot, of general funding sources like the Challenged Athletes Foundation, but a lot of them are very specific either to the geographic area or to a specific disability population or diagnosis. So that's something to be aware of. It's hard to do a comprehensive list of this because you're more likely to find options if you search based on what your support needs or your disability is. There are also sometimes equipment companies can help you get the funding to purchase the equipment that you need. I had a family that they wanted a tricycle, one of the ones that I brought today, from Freedom Concepts. And when we reached out to Freedom Concepts to figure out about sizing, they said, we have a grant that your child is eligible for. We need, their shoe size and a letter from the PT, and we will get it. And they did all of the legwork. It was the easiest thing. And then I got the most delightful video of them going for a ride in their parking lot at home. So again, there's too many on this slide to list, but they're all in the handout to get the more detailed information. Next slide. Okay, so here's the QR code that has the resource page as well as a link. So again, it's organized alphabetically by programs, and then you can also download the Microsoft Word document from there. And then I'll give everyone a chance to QR it.
You can hold the mic over so the people on Zoom.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thanks, Neha. Okay. So next slide, please. So the takeaways. And on this page, there's a thank you. So I'll just highlight it while it's here. This is a very supportive version of a tricycle. It has push bar and a steering and brake in the back for someone to be with the client. So this is one of our more supportive options. It has a seat belt, a chest harness, the works. So you can do a lot with this one. Okay, on the takeaways page, there's an image of a young boy sitting on a surfboard. He's wearing goggles and an orange rash guard that says Blind Surfer. A smiling volunteer sits behind him on the board for support and is pointing forward. I think she was signing to him. And then I'm behind wearing a red rash guard. I'm pushing the board with the participant and the volunteer into a wave. Okay, next slide. So our highlights, I just want to make sure that everyone leaves here knowing that sports are for everyone. Participation in sports and recreation improves the health and well-being of an individual with disability. Participation in sports and recreations also has positive impacts on the family, the caregivers, and the global community. Early access is important. It's never too late to start. The sooner the better. There are providers and organizations that are ready to help you get through the barriers, and finding the right fit for your family and your client is the key to long-term participation. Next slide. So we're taking in-person audience questions first for the Q&A, and then we will take any questions the Zoom audience has. If you're attending in person, please raise your hand, and someone will bring a microphone to you. And if you're virtual, please enter your question into the chat. And if we don't have time to answer all questions, I'll try to follow up afterwards with any answers. Thank you all for joining. Before we start the Q&A, I will say for those of you in person, I do have some pictures of equipment, and if you wanted to talk any equipment or programs, I'd be happy to do that after the Q&A. Hey. Any questions for me?
Okay, so you said finding the right fit is key for success, which makes sense. But so I'm a parent, and my daughter, it can be really hit or miss new activities with her. Where do you get guidance as to what to try? Because obviously there's a ton of different things, but there is legwork involved in any of them. So how do you pick?
So I would say the providers who work with your child, especially OTs and PTs, are probably a good first step. They're going to know what your kids' motor abilities are and also what their sensory preferences are. You know, like surfing might be great for some kids. They might love deep pressure. They might love to go fast. And others that are more sensory averse to water are not going to like that. There are some programs where you're in a big group, others that you're going to be more one-on-one. So those are considerations for someone that might have like sensory preferences around noises. So you can print out the list from the website if your providers don't know and just say like, look, these are all the options that are out there. Do you know of any programs in my area that you think my kid would like, or could you look at this and tell me like what types of programs you think would fit with who they are, and then go from there to try to find the resources in your community. But yeah, I think it's sensory and physical skills, and you know, if they enjoy being with physical activity, like For example, for horses, you can do hippotherapy where you're getting on the horse, and that might be something that's covered by insurance. But there's also just horsemanship, where you just go and brush the horses. There might be, there are like, I think they call it horse therapy, where, you know, you work through like the horses and you kind of like work through emotions and like a sensory experience. So you don't actually have to get on the horse and ride it. That's not the expectation. So even within horseback riding, there's 3 different options that might fit 3 different interest and personality profiles. But yeah, so I would say the best thing is to be like, here are resources. This exists. Where should I start? To the people who already know what your child likes.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I don't have a question, but I want to offer some comment on your question. Actually, that boy was my child. Is my child. I am a mom, and I was also a teacher. So we struggle a lot. He was born nonverbal, really complex, couldn't move every single joint. So to me, to answer your question, parent is the key. Self-care first, and then do not give up. Keep trying. What I did at that time, when he was younger, we had no idea what was going on with him. Until 2024, we figured out there's a visual impairment, and of course another thing. Prior to that, now he's 16 and a half. So what I did, I went parent support group for myself and for my child to get to know what's in the community. I Google search. I asked the providers. There are 3 key people in my life that helped support me with my child. The first person was his physical therapist. I kept asking myself what was the one thing that I could make him happy, and it was the motor. So we tried YMCA, inclusive, didn't work. We tried school-based, didn't work. And I private hire one-on-one. A lot of them, because they don't have the skill, they got scared of my child condition, so they could. So I went back to the school. When he was 2 years old, kept asking the physical therapy until 3, 4, when he was about 5 years old. So the PT said, Jocelyn, there's an organization called Special Olympics. So she connected me to Special Olympics. Today, he's still actively participating in that organization. And the other thing was parent support group. I did not get support, like a real support for him, but for myself, yes, 100% of time. But I got connected to one parent, encouraged me for people with vision thing. To me, it was so new to me. And actually, there's someone sitting in this room that being so supported. I knew the parent was through adaptive swimming. Joe's in the room. Because he was in so many areas of need. So I was hesitated, shall I sign him up for the opportunity or not? Then I decided there will be no loss if they throw him out, that's fine. He did not. He talked to me, he sat down, he talked to me, and then, Jocelyn, give it a try. From there, I met the parent. The parent encouraged me to go further. Now we knew what, on top of everything, he also had vision impairment. So my recommendation to you is to not give up, self-care, continue outreach, and find the person. You will get the support. Thank you.
And thank you so much for sharing your personal experience and a parent perspective on this. I really appreciate it. Are there any other questions in the room?
Tricycle, how do you know? Will they have enough to go around if you send your friends to get that tricycle from the company that?
You mean in terms of the funding opportunities?
Well, that too, but basically, how many, I'm assuming that came from a store?
So this came, a lot of the equipment you get directly from the vendor. So this vendor is Freedom Concepts, and it's the DCP 12, I think is the bike model. So we were lucky that we had this bike in program and the student tried it and it was successful, and we knew that beforehand. So then we reached out to the company, myself and the family on the call, and said, we want to order this bike. What's the process? And they walked us through the whole thing. I literally traced the kid's shoe and sent them a copy of a picture of like his foot size, to make sure that we got the right foot pedals, and they organized the funding and told me like what my letter needed to contain in terms of like what information the grant was looking for. I don't think the process is always that easy and streamlined with equipment. But so often it's reaching out to the vendor to find out what the options are. Mhm. Yeah, and there are also Northeast Passage is on the resource list. They have a lot of different options. They do programming and they also do rentals. So having that experience to try the equipment to make sure that it's the right fit, and then you can say if a provider has to write a letter of justification, it's really helpful to say the equipment was trialed and they were successful using it. So that's an option, is to look for rental equipment or programming in the area. I volunteer with Waypoint Adventure, which a lot of the photos that I brought are from their programming, and they have so much equipment. They will rent it out, but they'll also set you up on it on the program and let you know, like, this is the size that worked, these are the modifications that worked, this is the vendor and the model and everything like that. So if it's possible, which can be hard, finding a program that has the type of equipment you're looking for, and then getting their help to figure out what the right option, and then approaching the vendor from there. Okay.
A virtual chat. I have a question from Jessica. She said, thank you for sharing. I really love the examples of different adaptive sports and recreation options. What are your thoughts about incorporating elements of adaptive sports to current physical education lessons in schools? And how might schools get started to include children with diverse needs more?
I think that's a really great question. I do think at Perkins, we tend to be resource rich. We do have a lot of these equipment options, and they are incorporated into our adaptive PE classes. I think if you're looking in a more public school or in a different environment that has different resources, I think, explaining the benefits of participation. There are a lot of research studies in particular for integrated PE classes, how important that is for both the disabled and the non-disabled students. But to, the schools also might be able to access grant resources for programming to get some of that equipment in. So I think it's really just leveraging what your child needs or what might benefit a larger population in the school environment, and just letting the same thing, print this out to the PE teacher, send them the webpage link, and just say like, hey, there are all these options out there. How can we start to build that into the school environment? Again, at Perkins, we're lucky. They host Camp Abilities Boston. It just happened over April break at our programming. Our APE teachers are very involved in the Special Olympics. A lot of us volunteer with organizations and are familiar with that, but I know that not every environment has that. So just letting them know what's out there and asking how that can be part of your child's school day. And especially in the schools, we're reflecting back to the curriculum and the educational access. So just, this is something that their typical aged peers would be participating in. So how can we make sure that my child, my client, has that opportunity as well?
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions?
Okay. So thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you for attending the 2026 Early Connections Conference. Action. Scan the QR code in the center of the screen for more sessions.